Good afternoon, everyone. I'm C. Arpit Kabra, Regional Council Member WIRC, and I welcome you again in this exciting series of webinars that we have launched for practical purposes and learnings for things which are going to be very essential in the near future. The good news is and the bad news both. We've got an extended lockdown in Maharashtra at least. I don't know if you take that as a good or bad, but yes, let's continue learning and let's be optimistic about whatever is going to happen will be for the good. I today have the speaker CS Ranjit Kejriwal ji, who joined in from Surat and is going to talk to us about the MCA compliances. I would request CA, our regional council member CA Manish Gadia, to please present his opening remarks.
Thank you, Arpit. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to interact with the student. And students are always heart of WRC or institute. So whenever we see that this position of lockdown is there, immediately Arpit came into action and organized a series of learning for you all, and hats off to the dedication of Arpit. We will be able to interact with you and give some training to you, which will be useful once the lockdown is over. And the compliance of corporate compliance is very much important, and you should learn that side also, because I have seen that most of articles are actually going for income tax, maybe direct indirect tax, audit, but this compliance or this corporate side is also very important. Nowadays huge penalties, huge late fees are leviable, and this open up a new area of practice for not only for CS but also for CA also. So thank you very much, Arpit, for organizing all this series and choosing this topic, and I also thank Kejriwal ji for accepting our invitation. Over to you, Arpit.
Thank you, Manish Bhai. Thank you for your support. Without your support, all of these wouldn't have been possible. And the entire structure that we see is being organized live through Manish sir's office, and it is his only office that is working right now. And thanks to the special permission that he has taken, and so that we could serve the entire profession, because otherwise ICI is locked down. So this all is happening due to him. Thank you, sir, and I place on record appreciation for the entire staff of your office who are managing in whatever manner to conduct these sessions for all of us here. Today, since these are students, so we've got Vikasa member Dania Supariwala is with us. I will request her to introduce the speaker for today.
Good afternoon, friends. I'm a member of Vikasa. So here we are for you conducting the webinars. We are happy to see your overwhelming response. And now we have CS Ranjit Kejriwal sir with us to guide you all for the MCA related compliances. He is having experience of more than 15 years as a company secretary. He has been the honorary secretary of Surat ICSI for more than 5 years and is a member of Professional Development Committee of the WIRC of the Institute of Company Secretary of India. He is a regular speaker at the ICSI and ICI events. We are very happy to have you, sir, with us. Before we begin, I would also like to thank the whole WIRC, the Vikasa, and special thanks to WIRC Chairman Lalit Bajaj sir, Vikasa Chairman Hitesh Pomal sir, and CA Manish Gadia sir, and Arpit Kabra sir. Thank you so much for facilitating the students and helping us learning new things. Over to you, Arpit sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dania. It's indeed the entire efforts of Vikasa that we've already. So in the earlier session, we had 500 plus attendees. Today, we already crossed 300. So I think this is great that if through all of this, if we could drive in more and more learnings, it's really fantastic. Great work done by Vikasa and very committed. I now request CS Ranjit Kejriwal sir to please continue with the topic for today, and I hope this will be a very good learning session for all of us. Happy learning. Stay home, stay safe.
Thank you, Arpit ji. Thank you, Manish ji and Dania ji for the introduction. Good afternoon, friends. So it's pleasure to speak to you about some corporate compliances. So first, I will like to take you why we have chosen the topic corporate compliances and amnesty scheme. See, I have been told that most of you are the articles doing articleship at some offices of chartered accountants. So day in, day out, you are involved in the audits of corporates. You may be auditing for small companies, larger companies, mid-sized companies. But what happens? Generally, we are stick to our corporate income tax compliances. We do audit, we see accounting standard. Many times we also miss accounting standards and forgot about the corporate compliances. And we are missing upon very small corporate compliances. And this small corporate compliances cost us heavily to the directors, to the company, and sometimes to the auditors also. So first, before starting for my session, let me explain what a company is. So company, technically, we all know what a company is. Company is a separate entity, all this. But generally, it is a pooled investment. Pooled investment means there are many investors. It's a large number of persons who have clubbed something, who have come together to start a business. Okay, business is more important here. So what do we do? Many shareholders come, they bring their own contribution and start a business. But now what happens? Suppose there are 50 shareholders, all have brought rupees 1 lakh each. We have a total pool of 50 lakhs. But 50% cannot run a business. So what happened? They amongst themselves put some representatives to work on behalf of them. We tell such persons as directors. So now we have two set of person in a company: shareholders who are the owner of the fund. Fund now it is known as a company. It has got a structure. We have incorporated it, and it is managed by few of them who may not be few of them also. They may be some outside professionals, and they are known as directors. So what is happening? These directors are reporting to shareholders. They are trustee of the assets of shareholder. They have duty towards shareholders. So this is all about Companies Act. See, in nutshell, what is Companies Act? It defines the relations. The Companies Act does not deal with taxation. It do not want any tax from company. It do not go for any other thing. It's simply a set of rules and regulations how a legal entity, a fictitious legal entity, work in the complete ecosystem of business. So first relation which a company define is amongst the shareholder and amongst the director, amongst the owners and the managers. Second thing, now company is a separate legal entity, so it is not an internal thing which just go only for shareholder and director. It works in a complete ecosystem. In ecosystem, there are another third party. So how company interact with the third party? How third party will interact with company? Then at last, the government comes into picture. How the regulator regulates the company? How the company interact with the regulator? So basically, the company law is all about these three things: how shareholder and director should work with each other, report to each other, how the company should work with the regulator, and how the company should work with the third party. And all these working, these coordinations are known as corporate compliances, which a company has to do daily basis. So I'll take you to the next slide. So here in this slide, you are seeing various names. I have hidden some part. I will bring it in the next few slides. Mr. Pawan Goenka, he is the director of Mahindra and Mahindra Limited. Mr. Vinod Kumar Dasri, he is the director of Ashok Leyland Limited. Mr. G.V. Krishna, director of Hindustan Petroleum Limited. Now there is some correlation between these three persons. Not three companies, three persons. So I will later on tell you. I think few of you may have guessed it, few of you may not have guessed it, but I will tell you after this session what is the correlation between them and what is the importance of corporate compliances for us. So first, we take you to the life cycle of the companies under Companies Act 2013. So what is the life cycle? It is a legal entity, we all know. So when it is a legal entity, the company has to come into picture. It has to be incorporated. Incorporation, there is a separate set of rules, procedures, law by which the company is incorporated. So we'll not go into the incorporation. Simply we'll come to a stage where our company has been incorporated. How we come to know that our company is incorporated? It's a very simple thing. We have a certificate from registrar of company stating the name of the company, then the SIN number, that is corporate identification number, and nowadays PAN, TAN, all these things are also printed on that certificate. So once we get the certificate, we know that our company has been incorporated. So suppose Mr. A and B have incorporated a company AB Private Limited. Now what happens? Mr. A know that company is incorporated. Mr. B also know that company is incorporated. How does Ranjit Kejriwal know that this company has been incorporated? I'm not going to their office and finding out their files and folders that they have a certificate of incorporation. So they have to tell the world at large that they have incorporated the company. So for telling the world at large, what we do? We have to put a board, a signboard, which must contain our name, the SIN number, our registered office address. Now we have prepared a board, but again the board has to be displayed. So the company need to have a registered office. So the first compliance which a company has to do once it is incorporated is to have a registered office. Company law provides 15 days time to any company to finalize registered office if it has not finalized it at the time of incorporation. So what happened? We have finalized the registered office and we put a board on it. Now we have done it. As a shareholder and director, we have done our duty. How does the regulator and public and large will come to know that this is our registered office? So we have ROC means registrar of companies. Every state has its own registrar of companies. In Mumbai, it is registrar of Mumbai, registrar of Pune, Gujarat registrar at Ahmedabad, and so on. So we have to file a form INC 12. Sorry, it is INC 22. So we file the form. In that form, we put our registered office email ID and all these things. So this thing comes to the knowledge of public at large. Now see, what is the role of registrar here? Registrar is just like a registrar. It has multiple roles. First is the registrar office. Like we do any document for land, we buy a property, sell a property, we register a thing at registrar's office, sub-registrar office, so that public can come and view the records and know who is the owner is. So registrar has also got a role to maintain an electronic depository of documents where anyone can come, pay a nominal fees of ₹100 and see what the company is all about. So the first compliance which we have done is intimation of registered office to the registrar and stakeholder. See, every compliance is linked to a form. So everything we have to do, we have been asked by company law, we have to file a form with the registrar of companies. Every form has been prescribed a fees. So it generally depends on the size of the company. The filing fees may be 100, 200, 400, 500, 600. There is a time period, 15 days, 30 days, 60 days. If you delay by that, then we have to pay additional fees. Then again, if you delay by some more period, we may have to pay penalties. Penalties may be lump sum or penalties may be per day running basis. Suppose you did not file the form for registered office. What will happen? You have to pay additional fees first. If there is some default involved, the registrar feels that there is something fishy in this, he may persuade penalty also on you. The penalty may be again a fixed thing, say rupees 10,000, 1 lakh, 5 lakhs, plus a per day penalty. Means suppose you have not kept the registered office for first 60 days. So the penalty may be 60 into 1,000, 60,000. So these are known as penalty. So one thing is additional fees, another thing is penalty, and the third thing is prosecution. So now we have a company incorporated with us. We have a office. Office means it must be an office. It cannot be a land. It must have a roof like house property in income tax. Then what is the necessary thing? With whom public will deal? AB Private Limited, now someone comes to their office with whom they have to deal. They cannot deal with shareholders. Although shareholders are the owners, but they are not the representatives of the company. So the company has to appoint first directors. Now, who are the first directors? Who are the shareholders? At this point of time, we have to learn that we have no shareholder. Although our company has been incorporated, we have not issued any shares till now. Till date, we have subscriber. Many times in audit, it comes that a company has been incorporated in say 25th of March, and subscriber is say there are 2% A and B with 1 lakh rupees each. Total paid up capital must be 2 lakhs. But they have not brought the fund in the company by 31st March. So what do we represent in audit report? Shall we put our paid up capital at 0, or shall we put our paid up capital as 2 lakhs? So what Companies Act prescribes is that the subscriber, the day when they are pending the subscription clause, they have agreed to bring that much money. It means it is a debt due by them to the company. So the company will record as paid up capital 2 lakhs, and on the debit side, share capital receivable Mr. A 1 lakh, share capital receivable Mr. B 1 lakhs. Now we want to appoint first directors. So either our article, now what is article, what is memorandum? We all have seen memorandum and article. Memorandum of association, it provides the brief. It is a document which interact with outsiders. Suppose I am dealing with the company, I have to check the memorandum of the company. I want to sell some, say, a truckload of bricks for a construction site. So I have to check whether the company's memorandum allow it to do construction or not. If it is not involved in construction, it is per se invalid. The transaction is per se invalid, and I cannot sue the company or shareholder for the same. Articles is the internal affairs of the shareholders, how they want to run the company. So if the articles of the incorporated company provides some way, some mechanism of appointment of first directors, it must be appointed as such, else the subscribers to the memorandum of association are deemed to be the first directors. So we have completed the first stage of the company. Company has become live, it has become incorporated, it has have a registered office. Now we know that few persons are the first director. In our case, we will assume Mr. A and Mr. B are the first directors of the company. Now what will happen? This director, how this director work? These directors works through board meetings. They do meetings. There are two types of meetings: board meeting and shareholders meeting. Day-to-day affairs are done by directors and not by shareholders. Shareholders have no right to enter into the premises of the company unless and until they are specifically authorized by law for some specific purpose. We should very much keep it in mind. It is a director who are going to run the show. The law provide various checks and balances on the authorities and power of directors. That is another thing. So the director will hold a board meeting. Now this is the first board meeting of the company. So first what we have to do, we have to select a chairman. If there is a meeting, there must be a chairman to conduct the meeting. So who will be the first chairman? Who will be appointed by A and B jointly. So suppose A and B jointly appoints Mr. A as the chairman. So what happened? Mr. A becomes the chairman of the board, and simultaneously he becomes the chairman of the company also. So for all the purposes, Mr. A will be known as chairman of the company. He will chair the board meeting, he will chair the general meetings. Now, as we have discussed, what is the relation between director and shareholders? It is the relation of trust. Directors are working in a fiduciary capacity to shareholders. So how the trust is established, how the trust is strengthened? by true disclosures. Mr. A is director here. So how the shareholder of AB Private Limited trust him? So it is the duty of A to entrust trust on his shareholders. So what he will do? He will disclose. Let's see, these are my relatives. Mrs. A, this is my son, this is my daughter, this is my father, this is my mother. These are all the firms in which I am partner. These are the companies in which I am having substantial shareholdings. These are the AOPs in which I am a member. These are the trust in which I am a member. So I am disclosing everything upfront to the shareholders, to the company, so that you do not doubt me. So this disclosure has to be given in a form MBP1. This form has to be given at the first time when the director is appointed. During every year first board meeting, it has to be renewed with any additions and deletions. Now that filing of this form has been discontinued by the company law, but earlier when the Companies Act 2013 was notified, this MBP1 has to be filed with the ROC with as an attachment to form number MGT14. So this is an important thing which you have to remember. See what happens that we read law as on date. So as on date, we know MBP1 is not to be filed with ROC. But suppose 6 years back, when it was necessary to be filed with ROC, our company has not filed it. So we have a non-compliance which is continuing till date because we are reading today's act. And the penalty is say rupees 500 per day. So 500 per day, 6 years, 6 into 365 into 500. So we can assume what the amount of penalty may be if we miss such small filings. So this was the first thing, MBP1. This is the disclosure by directors. Now this disclosure is very important for us as auditor and for shareholder, because when we certify related party transactions, say under 3CD or say under AS18 in the notes to balance sheet, from where do we come to know that who are the relatives of the director, who is the related party? So this is the official document MBP1 which we have to collect from the company, and based on this we determine who are the related party of the company and report the related party transaction. We see whether the related party transaction are genuine or not. Now what another thing the first board meeting has to do? It has to issue shares. So what happens? Till date we had subscribers. Now first board meeting, the directors will finalize a format of share certificate, a company seal or anything else, any stationery and all this, and they will issue share certificates to the subscriber and they become the members and shareholders of the company. Now the most important thing that the directors has to do, they have to appoint auditor. Now what is the role of auditor? We all know that auditor has to do audit. Audit has to be done in proprietorship concern also and companies also. Now what is the difference between the audit for a proprietorship concern and a corporate? Audit report of a company, I think you all remember, is addressed to the shareholders of the company. So again, we come to our original example. There were 50 shareholders in our company and they have entrusted Mr. A and Mr. B to manage the company. So how do we keep a check on Mr. A and Mr. B? Either all the 50% at different point of time at different places go and visit Mr. A and Mr. B, ask them questions, raise queries, verify documents, verify transaction. So this is not practical. A and B will never be able to work independently, fairly, and give time to work. Rather, they will be involved only in replying to the queries. So the law form an option that appoint an independent auditor. So we as a shareholder, as a company, has to appoint an independent auditor. Independent auditor means There are various criteria given under section 141 to 144. Who is an independent auditor means basically he should not be dependent on the directors and the promoters of the company. So we have to appoint an auditor who will check every transaction of the company, books, voucher, records, and report to the shareholder that all the things are true and fair. And if he finds any fraud, if he finds any lacuna, he finds that any law is not complied, see report, I think you know all these terms, internal financial control, company's audit report order. So all these are the reporting parameters of the auditors which are shared with the shareholder. So they come to know what they have to see, whether the company is on right track or not. So the first auditor is appointed by the board only. But actually who should appoint the auditor? It must have been shareholders, because they are entrusting him to report to them. So first auditor is appointed only up to the first general meeting. He cannot be appointed for 2 financial years. His appointment is only up to first general meeting, and he will be appointed by the board. As soon as he is appointed, a form ADT1, audit ADT1 number 1, is to be filed with the ROC within the prescribed period, stating that Mr. So and so has been appointed as the auditor, and this auditor will do the audit for this and this to this period. We have to mention the period. So this form is filed. So again we have a form which have to be filed. See, in MBP1 we had MGT 14 to be filed. Now as we have appointed auditor, we have ADT1 to be filed. This auditor will retire in the ensuing AGM. There he may be reappointed or he may not be reappointed by the shareholders. Then the appointment will be for a continuous period of 5 years. So first auditor is appointed from board meeting to first general meeting. General meeting here means annual general meeting, not any extraordinary meeting. Then afterwards, the auditor is appointed for a term of 5 years each. So from 1 to 6th year, he will be appointed. A company has no option to appoint an auditor for 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. It must be for a batch of 5 years. So the auditor will be appointed for 5 years. Again, if his term is expiring on 6th year, he will be appointed for 6th year to 11th year. For certain large company, there is also principle of rotation of auditor. We will not go in depth to it, otherwise it will take the whole time. Now what we have to do? We have issued the share, we have disclosed the interest, we have appointed the auditor. Now we want to open a bank account. Why? Because every transaction has to be done through bank only. Once bank is not there, we cannot do anything. So opening of bank account is a mandatory requirement of the first board meeting. So now what happened? We received the shares, we have appointed the auditor, we have a register office in the place, we have opened the bank account, we have received the subscriber capital. So again, we intimate to the registrar of companies that we have all the basic parameters on ground. We are ready to start our business, and we are requesting you to allow us to commence the business. See, till this time we were not allowed to commence the business. Now it is first time that we are allowed to commence the business. We inform the ROC, we again file a form with ROC INC 20A stating that we have done all the homework. Now we are going to commence the business. Then it's recording of minutes. Minutes you all know, I will not go into deep, but minutes, why it is required in first board meeting? Here the board decide who will write the minutes, who will keep it custody. These are very legal and technical documents which are very helpful to a company whenever there is a trouble. So there are set parameters for it which every company has to follow. Then fixing of financial year. In the first board meeting, we have to fix financial year. Generally, we know financial year is of 12 months. 1st of April to 31st of March, that is financial year. But company law provides a carve out. Suppose the company has been incorporated on 25th of March. So what do? Either we prepare a audit report of 25th March to 31st March, Now what we will prepare? We have no bank account, we have no fund received, we have no fund given, so we do not have anything to prepare. And it is a very short period to do all this thing, all the exercise of doing unaudited accounts, audited accounts, calling general meeting for that, and all this. So the government has allowed, the company law has allowed that the first financial year of a company may be of 15 months. Means if our company is incorporated on 1st of January 2020, our first financial year may be from 1st January 2020 to 31st March 2021. So this is the maximum period of a financial year and only first financial year. Afterward, it is always 1/4 to 31/3. There is no option. Then we decide to maintain some books and register. Books, we all know books of accounts, whatever it is. Register. Now what are registers? Why do we need registers in this online time? I think many of you have seen that black register in the offices of the company known as statutory register. So there are various type of registers which are to be maintained by us. The registers to be maintained are register of director or key managerial person. So in this register, we put the name of the directors, his father's name, his mother's name, address, DIN number, date of appointment, date of resignation, number of shares held by him, list of his directors. So if any shareholder wishes that we want to see who are the directors, means who are the directors is not only the name. If we want to do the KYC, who are the related party and all these things, we may go and visit at the office and see this register. The next is register of members. Who are the members of the company? Who are the shareholders of the company? Again, there is a register which has to be maintained by us. Register of share transfer has to be maintained. Register of charge has to be maintained. Register of related party transaction. Register of deposits received by the company. So again, when we see all these registers, we will come to know these are part of the ethical compliance of the company. How ethical? See, register of director. The director disclosing all their details to the shareholder in this register. Register of members, we know who other member of the company are. See, the membership of the company is freely transferable. So today A and B started the company, but suddenly B transferred the shares to X. How do A comes to know? There are 50 shareholders. He cannot go and ask every shareholder every time that you tell me whom you have transferred the shares. So what he can do? He can go to the register office and he can verify the register of members. So he comes to know who the co-owner of the companies are. Then register of charge. It is a very important register. See, if we have incorporated a company, we started a business, we are having assets. Now directors are managing that assets. Suppose some director mortgage our land for the loan given to another person, what will happen? In our example, AB Private Limited, Mrs. A wanted to start some business on personal basis, and Mr. A mortgaged the land of AB Private Limited to the bank for a loan to Mrs. A. So what happened? He is encumbering the property of the company, in favor of his wife. So there's just cheating on the shareholder, breach of trust. How the shareholder will come to know? So the shareholder cannot come to know. A shareholder cannot run from bank to bank going and asking whether you have given a loan, whether you have taken a guarantee and all these things. So there is a mandatory requirement of maintaining register of charge. This register of charge is also maintained at ROC office and at the company's office. So shareholder may anytime take inspection and come to know what charges are on the assets of the company. Now again we'll think that Mr. A will not record the transaction in the register of charge because he is not an ethical person. He already have breached the trust, so he will want to avoid this transaction. So what will happen? So now to balance this thing, what law has provided that if a bank gives a loan and take the properties charge of the company, it has to be registered with ROC. If it is not registered with ROC and the company is dissolved, liquidated, or become insolvent, bank will lose its secured rights. He will not be treated as secured creditor. So now what will happen? To keep intact his right as a secured creditor, bank will push the company to maintain the register of charges. Then register of related party transaction. We as a shareholder, as a regulator, as a third party come to know what are the related party transactions. So we may check that whether they are done at arm's length price or not, and whether they are genuine or not. Auditor must check through the register of related party transaction. We generally certify in our CARO report that the company has complied with all the section of 188. So this 188 section relates to the related party transaction, and 189 is the section under which this register is to be maintained. So if this register is not maintained and we are certifying in the CARO that all the compliances has been done, we are certifying a wrong thing. Register of deposit, if our company has taken any deposit from public in general, this has to be reported here. So these are the basic register maintained. There are no forms required to be filed directly, except for few indirect form like register of charges and related party transaction. We also file. We will see it later on. Now what happened? We have started our company. We have started our company. We have done the first board meeting. We have all the books registered and all the things in the place. Now there's a requirement that the board should meet from time to time. A board should meet at least 4 times in a year. There shall not be a gap of more than 1 board. Have to have meetings. So the board is done meeting now, year end. Suppose 31/3/20 was the first year and it has concluded. Now what we have to do? So now what we have to do? We have to prepare our accounts. So we have prepared our accounts. These are but obvious unaudited accounts. Now this unaudited accounts we have to submit to our auditor, to whom we have appointed in our first board meeting. So before submitting this unaudited accounts, it has to be signed. See how an auditor comes to know which accounts you have to audit. Generally what we are seeing in smaller companies, basically in MSME segment, is that as an auditor we go to company, they give us a rough trial balance, we guide them, you do this, you do that, you pass this entry like this and all this. Technically speaking, this is not an audit. This is a bookkeeping service. So as per company law, we are required to do a thorough audit. So for audit of accounts, so who have to prepare the accounts? Company has to prepare the accounts. Company will give a complete accounts to us. We will audit it and we will prepare a report whether that accounts are true and fair or not, and various other things which is required by company law or some other law to be reported therein. So these unaudited accounts must be signed by the 2 directors of the company, and if the company is having a managing director, the managing director must sign it. It must be signed by the CFO of the company and company secretary if it is in employment of the company. So there is a requirement of 4 persons to authenticate these accounts, and they are 2 directors including managing director, and if there are in the company a company secretary and CFO. All these 4 persons will certify the accounts and they will send it to the auditor for their reports. So what happened? Auditor will ask for various documents, vouchers and all these things, and he will start auditing. In the meanwhile, we have to do another thing. We as a director have to report to our shareholders. what we have done in the whole year. So we simultaneously start to prepare a director report. What is director report? So it is basically a report card, an annual appraisal report prepared by directors addressed to the shareholders. What does it contain? It is a detailed document. Section 134 of the Act covers it, and various other smaller sections are linked to it, which provide that you put this, put that in the director's report. Basically, it is a information document to shareholders, whatever have been done during the whole years. So the draft director report, it will contain highlights of company, its prospects, how the company worked in past, how it is going to work in future, summary of future prospects, how internal controls are working, CSR details, if you've done any CSR, to whom we have given the funds, why we have given the funds, how much we have committed, director's responsibility statement. It is an important thing. The director here affirms to the shareholder that we have done all the business in true and fair way. We have followed all the accounting standard. We have not deviated with accounting standard. If we have deviated, we have informed in the audit report. All the financial controls are there and various things. Appropriation of profits. The company have done a profit. Now what the director are willing to do it. Either they are going to give dividend or they are going to transfer it into reserves. All these things are reported here. Disclosures of various deposits and unsecured loans taken. See, we as a shareholder have pooled a fund of 50 lakhs, 50% into 1 lakh each in this company. Now what happened? Our liability is limited. Now we are seeing that our company has grown and the asset have become to the size of 1 crore rupees. So generally what we see, we have invested 50 lakhs, assets of 1 crore. So we have a profit of 50 lakhs, but it is not necessary. The directors may have taken loan of 1 crore from third persons in form of deposit, in form of unsecured loans. So what happens? Our liability side is now 150 lakhs and our assets is only 100 lakhs. So we are in losses. So these are also required to be reported to the shareholders. Then disclosure of loans, guarantees and investment mates means anything other than current assets. If our director are unable to deploy all the funds in the company itself for its main business and are given loans or guarantees or investment, they have to report separately to the shareholders. Then the details of the directors, key manager person, all the related party transactions and senior employees must be reported here to the shareholders. Then it is an important thing, details of the auditor, who our auditor are, and a statement on audit report means suppose we received the audit report and auditor have put some qualifications that this is wrong, stock is overvalued, gratuity has not been made. The director have to reply to the shareholder. See, auditor need not be replied. Auditor has reported his comment that he feels that these things are not true and fair. These are not as per accounting standard, not as per law, whatever it is. Now, what happens? Director have to report to shareholders that see your agent, your trusted person, the auditor have remarked so and so thing, and we have so and so explanation against that. So this is the duty of director to explain all the auditor remarks in director's report to shareholders, that why such things have been done, whether there was some logical reason for some non-compliance, or whether it was by mistake and the company is going to rectify in future. All these things are to be given. Even the directors have to state disclosure of material changes, that what material changes will be done. A statement of compliance with various minute laws has to be, and sections and provisions have to be reported here. So we have completed our director's report. Now we have also received our audit report. So what will happen? We will prepare our annual report. Annual report we all have seen. There will be notice of AGM attached to it. There will be proxy forms and ballot forms and all these things. So combined with the notice of AGM and other attachment, director report and audit report is known as annual report of the company. All these things will be approved in a board meeting. Now again, when this board meeting is done, these documents are approved. It has to be intimated and informed to the registrar of companies in form number MGT 14. Sorry. So again, we have filed a form. Now we held an AGM. In AGM, there are 4 ordinary transactions which are generally done every year. These ordinary transactions are approval of audited accounts with director report. See, here both the things are approved by shareholder. Audited accounts also, director's report also. Because both are addressed to shareholders for their perusal. Then dividend. If any dividend is declared by the board, it has to be affirmed by the shareholders. Again, we have to appoint the auditor. If some director is resigning by retirement, he has to be reappointed here. So these are the basic things which we have to do in AGM. Now our AGM have been done. So again, we have to report it to both the shareholders, public at large, and registrar of companies. So we will report it to registrar of companies. Now again, to report to registrar of companies, we have various forms prescribed in company law. So what are the forms prescribed in company law? There are basically 3 forms: AOC 4, MGT 7, and MGT 15. AOC 4 and MGT 15 to be filed within 30 days, MGT 7 to be filed within 60 days of the annual general meeting. What is MGT 15? MGT 15 is a summary of the AGM proceedings, that where AGM held, how it was conducted, quorum was there or not, item transacted, how items were transacted, who voted in favor, who voted in against, what was the ultimate conclusion. All these things has to be filed with the registrar of companies. Then we have to prepare 2 annual forms, MGT 7 and AOC 4. So this MGT 7 has to be filed, AOC 4 has to be filed. These are very important forms. See, what is the importance? All the summary of the company, yearly summary, is filed with the ROC in these 2 forms. If you want to know about the company, you just go to the website of Registrar of Companies, NCA 21. You download these forms and you come to know everything about the company. So these 2 forms are very important for any stakeholder to know about the functioning of the company, status of the company, how the company is doing. See, when you supply some material to your customer and the amount is used, you go to ROC and look for the balance sheet. That let us see what the net worth of the company is, what is the financial position of the company. So this is there in the AOC 4. You want to see who are the promoters, who are the shareholders, how fair the company is doing, we have to see the MGT 7. So these 2 forms are very important, and law also give them highest regard of filing these forms. There is a provision in the Companies Act, section 164, subsection 2, that for 3 years, any company is not filing these 2 forms, AOC 4 and MGT 7, the company may be striked off, and the director immediately will be disqualified to be appointed as director of any company. Even if he is a director of some other company, he has to vacate his office immediately. Means, suppose you are director in any small company, AB Private Limited or A Private Limited, which have not filed forms for these 2 forms for continuous 3 years. You cannot become director in any company for upcoming next 5 years. So you resign from all the companies, and also you will not be able to continue as director for next 5 years. So this is the importance of these 2 forms. Now, what all details have to be given in annual return in MGT 7? First is principal business activities of the company. So what is the principal business activity of the company and object of the company? See, in memorandum, we write the main objects of the company. So suppose we incorporate a company, we mention that the company will do object as start as a textile company. So what will happen in textile? A textile starts from yarn to garments. We may be producing yarn, we may be producing garment, we may be a retailer, we may be a wholesaler, we may be a manufacturer, we may be a service provider, anything. So a public does not comes to know exactly what business the company is. So what happens? Here in MGT 7, we specifically put exact nature of business which the company is doing. Then we provide the details of holding subsidiary and associate companies. Who are our holding company? Who are our subsidiary company? Who are our associate company? Then we provide the detail of share capital, debenture, and other securities. Means what is our authorized capital, what is our paid up capital, who are our shareholders, who are our promoters, who are non-promoters, who are institutional investors. All these things are to be placed here. Then we provide turnover of the company, net worth of the company, details of directors, KMPs, how many meetings have been held, who was present in the meeting, who was not present in the meeting, how much meeting one director attended, how much AGM the director attended. So all these things are summarized in this form. Seeing this form, a direct shareholder may come to know all the events of the company during the previous year, and he may take decision in the AGM whether to reappoint the director or not, whether to continue with this company, whether to continue with this team, and all these things. Another form, AOC 4. So this is a pair of form, MGT 7 and AOC 4. So AOC 4 contains information respect to the balance sheet and P&L account. So it is the financial forms. It gives the financial picture, the CSR detail, disclosures about related party transaction, and details about auditor's report. Auditor's report means CARO. Point to point, point by point, CARO is reported here. Which are the favorable remarks, unfavorable remarks, all these things are reported here. So while preparing CARO, we have to be very alert. So this was all compliance for the company inter se, company and directors. What the company is doing and what the director is doing, the shareholder and director, sorry. Shareholder and directors were reporting to each other. Directors reported to shareholder and shareholder vouched for them. Now we come to the third parties. Third party, first we come to the regulators. So what regulators require? Regulators first off require many forms to regulate the company. They want to see whether the company is running as per law or not. So one of the form is the regulator require is DPT3. DPT3 is full form is deposit 3. We all know that the company can take loan from only certain class of persons. Generally, these are directors of the company, their relatives, and intercorporate deposits. Other than this, we cannot take loan from any persons, courtesy to Sara Group, courtesy to various chit funds of Bengal, and various other companies who have defrauded small people with very less money with them and taken the whole their lifelong savings. So the government prescribed that a company cannot take deposit from any person except these few things. These few things in general, which comes in day to day, are loan from director, loan from director's relative, loan from other companies, advance for goods, advance for capital goods, etc. So what happened in our audit report? We report that yes, these are not taken by other than exempted classes. But again, the government found that there is something fishy. Everything which is reported is not correct. So government came out with a form DPT3. So it asked all the companies that you report to us that how much loan you have taken and declared that it is in the exempted category. You give us category wise, means you give this much is the amount, say 1 lakh is the amount we have taken from director. It is exempted under rule 22C1. We have taken 5 lakh from an NRI. It is again exempted under rule so. We have taken 10 lakh from a corporate. It is exempted under so and so. So we have to give this complete thing. On 1/4/19, we filed the first form. So this created the base of the company And now every year on year, we have to provide government with details of the fresh loan taken, old loans repaid. So the government is having an online register of loan taken by any company which is under the exempted category. Then again, government wanted the companies to file a form for MSME creator. MSME, I think all of us know, micro and small and medium enterprises. So there is a MSME Act passed in 2006, which stated that if you have any MSME creator, you have to pay him within 45 days. If you are not paying him, you pay him interest at the rate of 18% per month. This interest will not be allowed as a deductible expense. Such outstanding amount has to be reported in audit report. Generally, 90% of the MSME balance sheets, there is a caveat by the auditor that the company has not maintained the MSME data and we are unable to report it, or we have reported it to the extent maintained by the company. So the purpose of the law was getting defeated. So the government asked every company to file a MSME form, that you file every half year. How many persons are there whose dues are more than 15 days and are falling under the category of MSME, and reason why you have not paid the dues to them. So now whenever we start audit, we have to ask the company, please provide us the MSME form filed with the ROC, and we have to report our compliance under MSME, whether it is under 3CD or whether it is under Companies Act, as per the form filed with the ROC. Then again, it is a new form, coronavirus, COVID-19, Corona Action Taken report. The government have asked all the companies to follow safe distancing, to go for lockdown, to pay salary to all the employees despite lockdown. So the companies had been asked to confirm all these guidelines to the government of India through this form. This is not a mandatory form, this is optional form, but by goodwill gesture, every company should file and inform to the government that we are agreed to abide by the provisions of the law. Then come Band 2 form. This is very important form. We all must remember. Full form is beneficial owner, significant beneficial owner. So who is significant beneficial owner? Any person who directly or indirectly holds more than 10% of shareholding in any company is known as significant beneficial owner. It is different from a registered owner and a beneficial owner. See, suppose in our company AB Private Limited, there is a company X Private Limited holding 20% share. So what is happening? This X Private Limited is the registered shareholder. Suppose it was our company is having shares in DMET, then our shareholder will be NSDL, and this person, this X Private Limited, will be a beneficial owner. But the government wanted to know that who is the actual person, the natural person who owns these shares, because there are various frauds coming in light. The government was not able to track actual owners. There was multi-layering, there was round tripping and all these things. There were layers of the company running into hundreds of countries and thousands of companies. So government mandated every person to file this Band 2 form naming who is the significant beneficial owner of these shares. And he must be a natural person, and this has to be reported by every shareholder every time it is changed. Then DR3 KYC, again this is a form asked by regulator. We see very many vanishing companies. Companies vanish away, directors vanish away, directors are not traceable. Later it comes to know that their directors were fictitious persons, they were non-existent person. So the ROC or the MCA have mandated that every person has to file DR3 KYC, know your customer. Every director every year has to go to government and confirm that yes, this is my email ID, this is my phone number, and this is my date of birth, and all these details are correct. The phone number and email ID must be personal to the director and not of the company. It has to be remembered. So these are the few of the compliance which have to be done in respect to the regulators. Now there are a few additional compliance also. These are liable for some large companies. Large companies, it may be a listed companies, its paid up capital may be more, its turnover may be more, it must have borrowed something more. So such companies are known as additional compliances, larger companies. So now what happens to the larger company? They have to file one form known as MGT 8. MGT, it is used for the word management. Like in income tax, we have chapters in our act, deductions, business profit, business and profession, salary, all these things. So it's a way Companies Act also have various chapters, and one chapter is management and administration of the companies. So the forms for that particular chapter starts with the word MGT. For incorporation of the company, the forms starts with the INC. For the chapter directors, the forms start with the DIR. So these are the coding which will be easier for you to understand. So now MGT 8 is a form which is given by a company secretary in practice. So if the company is of a certain size, say it is a listed company, it is a public limited company having paid up capital of 10 crore or more or turnover of 50 crore or more, then it has to file a form MGT 8. The MGT 8 is a certificate from a company secretary that company has in general complied with all the provisions of the Companies Act. Means all the provisions which we have discussed in the earlier slides have been complied with by the company. This is certified by the company secretary. This MGT 8 form is to be filed with the MGT 7 form, the form which was to be filed with the annual general meeting. Okay, I think we all can correlate that when the company held the AGM, it has to file two forms, AOC 4 and MGT 7. AOC 4 was with balance sheet and MGT 7 was for the reports of the company, like director's report. Now again, for few companies, internal audit has been done compulsory. So what the word audit till now we are discussing were all about statutory audit. So statutory audit, it is a sort of post-mortem. We do everything when everything is over. The financial year, and now we come to the picture, we see the things, we just bring out the queries, the issues, the problems, the non-compliances. So government thought that for the larger companies, the bigger companies where the stake involved are huge, there must be a provision of internal audit. So there must be an internal auditor who do a regular audit of the company and report to the boards and shareholders and the government. So to whom this internal auditor is mandatory? Listed company, public company with paid up capital of 50 crores, public company with turnover of more than 200 crore, if its borrowings are more than 100 crores, and if it has taken public deposit of 25 crores. So internal auditor, who can be internal auditor? Internal auditor can be any chartered accountant or any cost accountant. So these two professional bodies are allowed to do internal audit for any company. Such internal audit must be appointed by the board of directors. These are not appointed by shareholders but are appointed by board of directors. Again, their appointment is to be informed to the registrar of companies through form MGT 14 that so and so person have been appointed as internal auditor. There is no other reporting provided for this internal auditor. No format of reports, no periodicity of report, no filing of these reports. But as a statutory auditor, we must be alert that the company has appointed internal auditor. Statutory auditor must get the reports of the internal auditors, check it, match with the books of accounts, because these are very important things. And if suppose internal auditor have mentioned something going wrong, something fishy in the company, some fraud in the company, and the same is not recorded by statutory auditor, it will be a serious lapse on part of the statutory auditor. So it is a very important document to be followed up by the statutory auditor. Now the third compliance for a big company is secretarial audit. Who is secretarial audit? Again, a company secretary is a secretarial auditor. He is also appointed by board of directors. Now the question comes, what is the difference between MGT 8 and secretarial audit? MGT 8 was also done by a company secretary, stating that all the compliances under Companies Act have been complied with. Secretarial audit, again what he will do. So secretarial audit is again for certain more larger companies, and it requires a more in-depth analysis of the company. Apart from company law, it also see that whether other applicable laws have been followed by the company or not. Even it is a duty of secretarial auditor to see whether the company have followed Income Tax Act, labor laws, and any other specific laws applicable to the company. So this secretarial audit is also mandatory for certain large company. Again, the paid up capital 50 crore, turnover 250 crore, company borrowing of 100 crore. This is also applicable to private companies if their loan from banks or financing institution exceeds 100 crore. This has been applicable from 1/4/2020, means applicable for financial year 1920. This we must remember, as this is a new provision. Appointment of secretarial audit, again form MGT 14 has to be filed with Registrar of Companies. Now there is a new provision in regards to shareholders. We have seen the current recent scheme Vivad Se Vishwas. So in Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, what happened? The maximum number of cases which will be settled will be either of the bogus share capital or penny stock, the long-term gain. So the reason of this penny stock, long-term gain, or this bogus shareholder was that the company was maintaining its records in physical form, shareholding was in physical certificates which can be manipulated, changed, duplicated, disputed, or anything without knowledge and without control of any third party. So government came heavily on it, and government prescribed a rule that all the public company has to compulsorily go into demat mode, and they will not be allowed to do any corporate action of issue of share, transfer of share until and unless their shares are in demat form. Government is also planning to expand this demat to private companies also. So every public company and larger private company due course of time has to convert its shares from physical to demat. So once a share is dematerialized, the company has to file a form past 6 half yearly with the Registrar of Companies stating the number of shares and the reconciliation. Now reconciliation means what? Suppose a company is having 1 lakh shares. So what will happen? It will give 50,000 in demat account of A, 50,000 demat account of B, and some smart promoter will come and issue 10,000 physical shares to Mr. X. So what happens? In demat we have total share of 1 lakh and we have another 10,000 in physical form. Total comes to 1,10,000, but actually our capital is only 1 lakh shares. So government wants that every half year a company secretary will come to your office, go to RTA office, ask for records, and prepare a reconciliation that whether the total of all these demat and physical shares, means physical shares with NSDL, share with CDSL, are matching with the paid up capital of the company or not. So this was another compliance. Again, for manufacturing companies, there's a requirement of maintenance of cost record, cost auditor, and cost audit. So if there are various classes, you may see in the screen for 35 crore, 50 crore, 25 crore. So generally it is, if your turnover is exceeding 35 crores, then you have to maintain cost records. If your turnover is exceeding 100 crores, you have to get your accounts audited by a cost auditor. So once your turnover is exceeded 100 crores, you need to appoint a cost auditor within 180 days. Suppose your turnover for the year ended 31st March 2020 was more than 100 crores, we have to appoint a cost auditor by the end of 30th September 2020, get your cost records audited from him, and file for the financial year 2021 by 30th September 2021. So this is all summary about the appointment of cost auditors. Now again, annual secretarial compliance. SEBI has cast again a more onerous responsibility on the listed companies, that annual secretarial compliance report by any practicing company secretaries to file within 60 days. The financial results have to be filed on quarterly basis, half-yearly basis, and annual basis. And report of AGM in MGT 15. We have discussed it already. Now again, there are some event-based compliances of the company. Event-based means appointment or reappointment of directors. So generally Form DR 12, DR 11, and MR 1 are used for such compliances. DR 12 is for appointment of director, DR 11 is for resignation of director, and MR 1 is for the appointment of managing directors. Change in registered office name, object clause, again we have prescribed forms. Increase in authorized capital, we have prescribed forms. Issue of shares, buyback of shares, we have prescribed forms. Creation, modification, and satisfaction of charge. Earlier points I think we have discussed in detail in our previous discussions. We will discuss a bit about charges. Charges means charges on the assets of the company. Generally, it comes in cases of banks. It may also come in the cases of debenture or private investor also, but generally it comes in cases of banks. Whenever a company takes loan from bank asks for some security. The security is given in the form of hypothecation of current assets, mortgage of immobile properties, or line mark of goods or fixed deposit receipts. So whenever such security is given, it is called creation of charge. When we modify the term, suppose initially the company took a loan of 1 crore, then it increased the loan to 1.5 crore. It is called as modification of charge. Then at the end of the day, year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year, the company will repay the loan and it is known as satisfaction of charge. So for creation of charge, we have form number CHG1. So this CHG1 has to be filed within 30 days of creation of charge. If we are unable to file that 30 days, we will get another 60 days with some fixed fees of say 1200, 2400. And if we are not able to file in this 60 days also, then we will have again a period of 60 days in which we have some ad valorem fees, 0.005% of the loan amount. And after this means 30 plus 60 plus 60, that comes to 150 days. We will not be able to file the form for creation of charge. It will means that in case of liquidation, the bank will become a unsecured creditors for life. So it is very important for us to remember that we file a charge form for creation of charge very seriously. For satisfaction of charge, again the time period is 30 days and it is extended up to 300 days, and further period is also given subject to certain compliances. But creation of charge is a very important subject because it hurts your bank to a lot of extent. In our earlier discussion, we discussed on many resolutions, many forms, many events, and repetitively a form MGT 14 was coming in picture. So this is a very normal form which is used in most of the time, and it is missed a lot of time to be filed. And the consequences are heavy. This form cannot be filed beyond 300 days. Like in first slide, I told you in the first meeting, the board has to give disclosure of his relatives. And that form is to be filed, the form MBP1 is to file with ROC in form MGT 14. So what happens? This MGT 14, if suppose you have not filed for the year financial year 2014, so there was a limit of 300 days. You have not filed, you have to approach central government, Delhi, for condonation of delay. the filing fees of the form is some 20,000, then they will condone your delay. They may again ask for some additional fees of 20, 50,000 or lakh of rupees. So one small non-compliance may cost your company around 1 lakh to 2 lakh rupees. So we must see for which events this MGT 14 is to be filed. These 4 events are the cases which are exclusive under the domain of shareholders. Sale of any undertaking by the company, and sale of investment by the company or making new investment, borrowing money above certain limits, and giving debt to director or relieving a director from debt of the company. These 4 things are exclusively given rights to the shareholders. Directors cannot do it. So if shareholder exercise any such right in general meeting, it has to be reported to ROC in form number MGT 14. Now this slide again, special resolution and employment of MD. These 2 rights rest both with shareholders and directors. Below that, there are few resolutions which are used in day out by a company, which are to be reported to ROC. This may be related to voluntary winding up, issue or buyback of security, call on unpaid shares, borrow money, amalgamation, merger, reconstruction, acquiring any new company, diversifying the business of the company. The slide has not changed in your PCs, I think. Yeah, it is there. Giving grant of loans or guarantees or provide security, making political contributions, appointing or removing KMPs, appointing internal audit, secretarial auditor. So all these are the resolutions which require filing of form MGT 14 with the Registrar of Companies. Now we have completed all our normal compliances required by a company in its regular life. So these are the various compliance which a company has to do. We discussed the penalties, we discussed the consequences. In AGM, I told you earlier that there are 2 forms to be filed by the ROC, by the company with the ROC, and that is AOC 4 and MGT 7. If for 3 years you do not file, the directors become disqualified. In the first slide, they show the name of 3 prominent directors of our corporate world: Mr. Pawan Goenka, Mahindra and Mahindra, Vinod Dasri, Ashok Leyland, GV Krishna, Hindustan Petroleum. So all these 3 directors were also directors in some small companies. Mr. Goenka and Dasari were director of Association of Automobile Manufacturers. It is a charitable company. It is not even a business company. And Mr. GV Krishna was the director of Messrs. Pushti Refineries Private Limited. What happened? These 3 small companies, which were non-working company, essentially these are non-working company, they are even not operating. So by mistake, they forgot to complete the compliances of this company and did not file, or the ROC deemed that they did not file their document for continuous 3 years, and they disqualified these 3 gentlemen for becoming director in any company. So they have to vacate the directorships of Mahindra and Mahindra, Ashok Leyland and Hindustan Petroleum. So you can see what is the seriousness of non-compliance of these small provisions. That for non-compliance of a very small company, which is not even existence or not functioning, the director has to lose his position in the big, large listed corporates. So although they filed some writ, there were some cases, there are some issues in all the process involved. They also get some favorable interim orders from the high courts. The matter is before Supreme Court, and they are again the director on the boards of the company. But this involves the seriousness of compliance in Companies Act. So I hope all you have understood till here. Now, despite all this seriousness, all these things, what is happening? We forget to do some compliance, we miss filing the forms and all these things. But the government is in a wave of some amnesty scheme since last year. There was an amnesty scheme. Amnesty means to forgo by a sovereign state some rights, some duties of its citizens. So in indirect tax, we have seen the SPLDRS scheme. In income tax, we have this Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. So in company also, the MCA 21 bought a new scheme known as Companies Fresh Start Scheme 2020. This was announced amidst the lockdown, and it allows the companies to file any form, whatever may be the period of delay, say 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. You file the form, no penalties will be asked, no additional fees will be asked. Suppose you have forgotten to file a AOC 4 of year 2004. So what is the penalty in form AOC 4? It is rupees 100 per day after 300th day. So it was the form of 2004, or say 14, don't go so much back, 14, 6 years, 300 days less, so 5 years, 500 into 365 into 100. So per form you will be lending and paying a penalty, additional fees of 1,50,000, penalties apart. So this scheme comes as a saver for all to complete their compliances till date. No additional fees will be charged, only normal fees will be charged. This scheme is from 1st of April to 30th of September. So till the midnight of 30th of September, we may file form having due date at any point of time, and there will be no additional fees. Even the government will not go for any penal proceedings for late submissions. And also, suppose you have been levied some penalty, some adjudication is pending before regional director, that also has been extended, and any company may go for this scheme. This scheme is also applicable to limited liability partnerships, but for them the timeline is 30th of August. So this was, friends, all about company law, compliances, and the amnesty scheme. I thank you very much for giving a patient hearing. So if there is any questions, we may take it, or
Thank you, and I think this was the best piece of what we wanted to see, the Fresh Start Scheme 2020. So very well covered, quite an informative session. Mr. Ji, do we have any questions? If you have any questions, please put it up. Mr. Ji? Yes. So you got some questions, Ranjit Ji. I'll read out
yeah,
to them for you. Will chairman of
yeah,
company
please.
be same as that of board meeting?
Yes, generally, unless and otherwise it is stated anything else in the articles, the chairman of the board is treated as the chairman of the company. The company
Okay.
article may provide that there
Second
will be two
question.
different type of chairman. Yeah, please.
Yeah, please continue. Anything else you want to add on that?
No, it's okay. It's completed.
Second question, can subscribers be called shareholders from first day?
See, subscriber and shareholders, there's a very thin line of difference. There is no definition of shareholder as such in the company law. Company law defines the two words. One is subscriber. Subscribers are the person who subscribe to the capital of the company while in corporation. And another definition is the member. Member is a person whose name is entered in the register of member, and he had given his written consent to be entered in such a register. So there is no such word shareholder in the company law per se. But for practical purposes, we use the word shareholders often and at every place. So when shareholders will come into existence, practically when there is a share. So generally, till the time we do not have a share certificate issued by the company, we do not use the word shareholder. Technically, there is no word shareholder in the company.
Okay. So
Yes,
quite
sir.
a thin line therefore.
Yes.
Next question is, if a company has not filed MBP1 ever, then should a company file this form under CFSS also?
Yes, sir. It is a golden opportunity that such a small non-compliance should be complied by the company, because when companies at 2014 came, MBP1 was required to be filed by every company, including private limited companies. Although this was a very onerous compliance and government discontinued it, but now at the CFSS scheme is there, it is better to take advantage and file these forms. It will hardly cost you 400 to 600. Yes, sir.
So the next question is also related to that. Since the MBP1 has been discontinued, is there a requirement that even we should file it for initial years in the new scheme?
Yeah, see, the discontinuance was not in a retrospective effect, it was a prospective effect. So before discontinuing, it has to be filed.
Okay. Next question is, what is Part A and Part B item in manufacturing companies?
In manufacturing companies, Section 148 of the Companies Act provides that every company should prepare cost records for ascertaining the cost of production of the company. So there are categories of production which are divided into two parts, Part A and Part B. Part A generally deals with defense, pharma, and such important items. And Part B is the residuary list, which contains all the items manufactured by the company generally. So for Part A, the limit of turnover is less. It is 25 crore and 50 crores for cost record and cost audit. And for Part B item, it is 35 crore and 100 crores. So basically, these are the list of the items which are manufactured by the company.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Next is, when directors are personally liable for bank borrowing by private limited company, if director has not given any personal guarantee, still can it be held liable for company borrowing?
See, directors are, unless and until there is some fraud involved, directors are not personally liable for bank borrowing of the company. If director have not given personal guarantee, they are not treated as guarantor and they have not to be pay any penny to the banks. Nowadays, what is happening, whenever there is any insolvency, the matter goes to IDBI through NCLT, and there is a specific provision for corporate debtor and corporate guarantor. So directors per se are not personally liable for bank borrowings.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Next is, when bank and company both not have filled form to create charge at ROC for borrowing, what should be done?
So I think what should be done? See,
Is
what
that a
is
fraud?
happening? First, liability of creation of charges. It is a type of fraud, although there may be way outs, but it will be treated as a fraud on face. Because see, what is happening, if we're not creating a charge, we are pushing a bank as an unsecured creditors. Now, when we're pushing it as an unsecured creditors, who is responsible? Whether bank is responsible or the company is responsible? The question arises. So it was a duty of bank also that it must have verified whether the charge has been registered or not. So bank is equally liable, but the company law casts the duty on company that the company has to register the charges. So the first responsibility is of the company and it has to be created by the company. If it is not created beyond 150 days, it cannot be registered. New document has to be executed and it has to be filed afresh.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What is the provision regarding paid up share capital up till holding of first board meeting?
See, I will explain it again. At first, when the company is incorporated, there are subscribers. So what subscriber is doing? Subscriber is signing the memorandum and writing that I am subscribing to say 10,000 shares of rupees 10 each. That amounts to 1 lakh. So the day when we are signing that subscriber page, we are signing a promissory note and it becomes a debt. So when the company incorporate, it does not receive any fund at that point of time, but its paid up capital will be treated as 2 lakhs only. And on the asset side, we have the subscriber as our assets from whom we have to recover the money. We may file a suit in court to recover that money. So from the day one, paid up capital of the company is there. We cannot tell that as the money have not been received, there is no paid up capital of the company, and the subscriber capital becomes the paid up capital of the company. Yes, sir.
Right. So I think those were the questions that we had received, and it's already 3:30. We have to also prepare for our next session. It was indeed a fantastic session, Ranjit ji, and quite an informative one, very detailed with absolute clarity. And I'm sure everyone today who have attended, more than 300 people, they would have really enjoyed this session today. I would now request CA Murtuza Kachwala ji. The entire structure that has been in place is because of people like the Secretary CA Murtuza Kachwala, Ravi Arora, DCO, Mishra ji, Subhash, Seema, Weber, all of these people who have been working very hard to make sure this is a success. I take on record appreciation for all of these people. Also, I recognize the presence of Vikasa Secretary Vedika Bajaj, Dania, who are introduced, and Siddharth is also there, but somehow they have not been able to join as a panelist right now. So I really thank all the Vikasa members for giving their time and energy to organize these sessions. I would now request CA Murtuza Kachwala, Secretary WIRC, to please place the heartiest vote of thanks.
Thank you, Arpit, for the opportunity. Actually, it is a real good thing that during this lockdown, where people are at home and we have some extra time which is saved from the commute, we are organizing all these trainings. And I'm seeing so many different topics which are getting covered, even for the CA students, which will help them the moment lockdown is open and they come back to office. It will help them in covering so many aspects across company law, direct tax, indirect tax, audit, etc. And it also helps in increasing the knowledge, keeping everyone updated, and equipping technically so that we can face the future with confidence. So thank you, Arpit, for taking the lead and organizing this whole series. I also thank the whole of WIRC, and let me thank all the participants who come in today. Also, I was seeing there were 260, 270 of them. Now coming back to this session, Ranjit ji, an excellent session. I was listening through all throughout. You covered so many aspects of company law in such a lucid manner, like in terms of from what is a chairman to a shareholder to a right to the duty to X, Y, Z, and it cannot be any better than this, and in a very, very lucid manner so that it gets straight inside. And thanks a lot. And Arpit, thank you once again for this opportunity and also for organizing this whole lovely series. Thank you.
Thank you, Murtuza bhai.
So
Let me remind you, tomorrow we have another exciting session, use of technology for conducting audits. So, try and... Hello?
Yes.
Yes, you can hear me, right? So tomorrow we have another exciting session on audits by using technology and innovative ways of doing auditing, even under lockdown and otherwise. So I'll request all of you to please make sure to come and attend tomorrow, same time, 2 to 3:30. Ranjit ji for taking out his value. Thank you, Ranjit ji.
good day.